Hey guys, hope you're doing well. This is Uday here from the Vanguard team, and today we're going to be discussing what to do about the bound reference. Now, if you guys aren't aware, in math subjects, you guys are actually allowed to bring a bound reference into your exams, and depending on your school, you may even be allowed to bring a bound reference for your SACs. So what is a bound reference, you might ask? Well, a bound reference, as the name sort of suggests, is reference material that you guys can bring into your assessment, which can allow you to look at how to answer previous questions, allow you to look at your notes, any other sort of formulas or information that you need. You can put it all in your bound reference, and it's right there for you to use, guys. Now, you can imagine this can be quite useful, but a lot of people struggle with managing their time around creating the bound reference, and a lot of people have misconceptions about what should you even keep in the bound reference in the first place. So that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. To begin with, what should you actually be keeping inside of your bound reference, guys? Well, a lot of people, when it comes to the final exam, tend to just bring in their textbook, which in my opinion is not efficient at all, guys. So the first mistake that I want you guys to avoid is please do not bring your textbook in. The reason being, it is a very big book, and if your exam table is small, you're not going to have enough room to actually do your exam. Not only that, but do you really need the full textbook to do well in the exam? Chances are probably not. And not only that, but your textbook is not very well organized, which in such a way that it would allow you to find the necessary question fast enough. Remember, guys, you're still under time constraints, and flipping through a huge textbook is not going to do you any good. So instead, what I recommend is that you guys create it yourself. Now, when it comes to creating it, you have to be a little bit concise with the bound reference. You can't put every single question in there because otherwise a huge bound reference is just going to get you lost in the middle of an exam. So what should you put inside of it then? In my opinion, you should only focus on the topics and questions which you have repeatedly struggled on, guys. If there's questions or topics which you're really good at, such as linear algebra or quadratic equations, leave it. Trust your own devices, trust your own knowledge, and don't put those things inside of your bound reference. But if there's a question style which you've repeatedly gone wrong, or sometimes you just forget a formula all the time, put that in your bound reference so that in the scenario where you tend to forget how to answer that question under stress or whatnot, you have it inside of your bound reference to refer back to. That's my first major tip for you guys. Now, the second thing, let's say that you do create your bound reference. The second mistake that I tend to see is that people tend to write it up. That is, they literally use pencil and paper and they create their bound reference inside of a notebook or some sort of thing. I recommend to you guys, do not do that. Reason being, because if you ever need to reorganize your materials, maybe there's an extra question for a previous topic that you want to put inside of your bound reference. Now, all of a sudden, you're in a bit of a pickle. Reason being, because you have to find some space to try and squeeze that into your paper bound reference. And unfortunately, you're not really allowed to bring in sort of a binder into your exam. It has to be something which is fully bound, and therefore it's not as easy as just inserting a page in there, if that makes sense. So instead of writing it up, my second biggest tip for you guys is please do it digitally. That's right, use a Word document, use Google Docs, use whatever online platform you prefer, but make it digitally, and then a few days prior to your final exam, print that bound reference out, and that's something that you guys can refer to in the final exam. Reason being, because if you're doing it digitally, it's a lot easier to, number one, organize all of your topics in an order that you prefer, and number two, if you ever need to make edits, it's not going to be messy like it would be if you're writing it up. So that's my second major tip there for the bound reference. Now, my third and final tip for you guys is, when do you actually start creating your bound reference? A lot of people tend to do this maybe in 2 or 3 weeks preceding the final exam. And let me just tell you this, that is a terrible, terrible approach when it comes to dealing with the bound reference. Reason being, because it's meant to be a reference of your own mistakes. So if you're only starting 3 weeks prior to your final exam, that's only 3 weeks worth of mistakes. And everything else, which you may have gotten wrong previously in the year, is kind of just lost because you hadn't started earlier. So when should you start? Well, obviously, the ideal answer is as soon as possible. But really, if you do want a sort of cutoff, I would recommend that you start the moment you start doing practice exams, guys. Okay? So if you really want a milestone to set in that case, start creating the bound reference once you've started your practice exams. That way, once you make mistakes with these exam style questions, those are questions which you can immediately copy and paste into your bound reference, and you can start that process of revising your mistakes a lot more quickly. And if over time you find that those questions become easier and you no longer need it in your bound reference, well, hopefully you listened to the second tip and you did it digitally, because then you can remove it and it's just a very clean and easy process overall, guys. So those are my major tips for the bound reference. If you haven't started yet, it's never too late, but please, please, please follow these 3 tips. And if you do that, then you should be on a good sort of journey to succeeding in your SACs and exams, guys. Okay? I'll see you in the next blog.